Welcome to our webinar, Monitoring and Supporting Vessels Using Video and Other Data from our sponsors, Harvest Technology Group. Our guest speakers today are Andy Freeman, Technical Sales Manager, EMEA, Damien Brown, Chief Product Officer, both from Harvest Technology Group, and Marcus Choy, Assistant Manager, Renewable Energy and Business Development, and HaoTzi, Technology Executive from Vallianz. If you have any questions, please leave them in the Q&A box on your screen for answering after the presentation. Here is our host, Carl Jeffrey from Digital Ship, to explain more.
Okay, so we're going to talk about better ways to monitor and support vessels using video and other data sent over the satcom. And we're going to hear from Vallianz Holdings in Singapore. They've got 115 offshore support vessels, and they're going to tell us how they're doing all the satcom. There's a press release last week that Vallianz has signed up the whole fleet to a new package from Inmarsat, Fleet Express. And we're also going to hear about new technology which promises 25% more data through the same satcom pipe than any other compression or bandwidth utilization technology. That's from Harvest Technology of Australia. How does it work? Well, you probably know that data on the internet is sent in lots of packets. If you want a completely perfect data transmission as the internet was designed, then you wait for all the packets to arrive and some of them get resent. So it takes longer and the data being sent is higher. But if you can afford to lose a pixel or two from each image, then it's okay to only send each of the packets once. And if we're using the images for situation awareness, perhaps that's okay. And the system's also got a way of searching for missing packets so they don't need to be sent again. And what are we going to do with this extra bandwidth? Well, we're hearing that some oil companies requiring that any vessel they charter, either tanker or offshore support vessels, has video streaming. You might want to do much more with the videos, including CCTV, mobile phone cameras, combining video and sensor data. And you might want to send more audio files, such as if you've got a crew member being assisted by a remote expert with headsets and microphones. So our first speaker today is Andy Freeman. He's Technical Sales Manager, EMEA with Harvest Technology, based in Aberdeen, Scotland. And he's going to be joined by Damien Brown, Chief Product Officer with Harvest Technology Group, based in Perth, but that's Perth in Australia. We're expecting to hear from Elisa Woodward, COO of Vallianz. Unfortunately, she's got a delayed flight, so not able to join us, but she's arranged for Marcus Choy, Assistant Manager Business Development for Vallianz, to do the talk. And then HaoTzi, Executive Technology with Vallianz, is going to join for the Q&A session. So we'll start with a 15 to 20-minute presentation from Andy and Damien explaining the technology, and then we've got a 10-minute talk from Marcus about his experiences using it and how the company is doing more with the satcom, and then we'll go to the Q&A session. So I'd like to invite Andy to start the talk. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Carl. Just share my screen. So good morning, everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy days to join us for this conversation. What we plan to do today is to give you an overview of Harvest Technology, the background to what we do, and to present to you what we see as the drivers of digitalization in the maritime sector, with a specific focus on establishing remote operations and remote monitoring. So thank you very much, Carl, for giving us the overview of presenters. So as Carl said, we've got Damien and myself from Harvest. And as he said, Eliza unfortunately is unable to join us. So I would also like to thank Marcus and HaoTzi for stepping in at short notice to help us out with this presentation. So looking forward to hearing from them as well. First of all, who are Harvest? So Harvest Technology, company based in Perth, Australia. We also have headquarters in the West Coast of America and in the UK. So we have a global reach. We see ourselves very much, first and foremost, as a technology development company. We see ourselves as being at the forefront of R&D, developing technology which facilitates the connection of people anywhere in the world, allowing for the real-time transfer of high-fidelity data, video and audio globally, irrespective of the geographic location, your network quality, or network congestion. So the technology and solution that we're going to be discussing today, this is basically born out of requirements within the ROV market a number of years ago to be able to stream ROV video back to shore. Fairly simple solution. what we need to do is get video over low bandwidth back to shore. So technology was developed for that very successfully. From that, it became apparent that we could do a lot more with it. So what we were able to then do was develop the technology so we could stream high definition video and frame synchronized data to go with that. This being the logical next step. And what that allowed us to do was facilitate the relocation of offshore project personnel to an onshore base. Now, Harvest have subsequently taken this model and applied it to the wider community. And we now work across multiple industry sectors, including defence, security, and of course, maritime, which is what we're here to speak about. So the reason that we're here talking about this is because obviously there's the adoption of technology within the maritime sector is increasing significantly. And there's global trends that we can see that we're going to talk about. So digitalization is paving the way for a new era in the maritime sector, and technology is constantly evolving to transform how organizations manage their operations. This allows for a full spectrum of possibilities, from simply viewing remote offshore CCTV camera footage, whether that's from the back deck or within the vessels, allowing that to be viewed in an onshore control or operations room, through to us being able to provide offshore workers with two-way communication, and that can be via wearable headsets with built-in cameras, so you've got the two-way video and audio. Video-based support from onshore expertise can then be provided. So rather than having to have a technical expert sent out to a vessel to help solve particular problems, that expert can be in a remote location and can communicate with technicians on board the vessel with high definition video and two-way audio. So as I mentioned earlier, it also allows certain offshore personnel to be moved to your onshore operations base. So what this means for the maritime sector is that vessel owners can leverage their existing communications infrastructure, camera networks, onboard systems, using innovative technology that provides true remote situational awareness and also improves operational efficiencies. And ultimately what this means is a cost saving to the operator. So the ability to use existing infrastructure makes these possibilities more attractive because it reduces the upfront capital expenditure while still allowing these savings to be realized. And the way we do this is by optimizing the bandwidth that you already have. And that's what we're going to talk about in a wee while. So the global trend towards digitalization is driving demand for dispersed data access and availability, which of course is challenging in remote environments with existing network limitations and increasing congestion. And the maritime sector is a prime example of this. I personally worked offshore in the ROV subsea inspection market, did that for about 13 years. And my own experience was that trying to stream video and data back to shore was always challenging because of the available bandwidth that we had. So what we see is with this trend of digitalization, this is now paving the way for what we see as a new era in the maritime sector. And the technology is constantly evolving to transform how organizations can manage their operations. And that's what we're going to be looking at. This will ultimately provide the ability to improve real-time situational awareness of your operations. It'll improve operational efficiencies as well. And as I mentioned, ultimately, it will reduce the impact to the bottom line. So what are these drivers for digitalization? Why are we actually doing this? It's all very well us saying, here's a technology, this is what we can do, but what are the drivers? Why would people want to change and move to remote operations or digitalize their processes and their operations? So drivers for change across the maritime industry, as with many other industrial sectors, are varied and complex. The examples that we've got here may apply to your organization. It may be some of them apply, some don't, or it may be they all apply to a certain extent. So these examples that we show are just some of the factors that we hear about from our clients who are beginning the digitalization journey. For some operators, there may be one or two key factors influencing the decision-making policies. But as I said, in most of the cases, that it's a broad spectrum of challenges that we're seeing. An example of this is we've worked with an offshore subsea contractor where the desire is to move key personnel to an onshore role. And that came from a need to reduce offshore operational costs. So by having all the inspection personnel who would traditionally be on board the vessel, having them onshore and effectively replicating their offshore environment in an onshore location, it significantly reduced the number of personnel required to be in a higher risk environment, i.e. offshore, or from clients requiring the ability to monitor subcontractors' offshore operations from their own offices. So sometimes a client will want to be able to log in and see a specific operation that's happening offshore. They don't need to be there for the whole duration of the sail or the campaign, but there's a specific part that they need to be able to see. In other cases, the driving factors have been related to legislative requirements for industry guidelines, which have required the ability to provide situational awareness remotely for routine monitoring, monitoring of specific operations, i.e. crane operations, or to support an emergency response planning. And we've seen this, for example, there's a particular operator in the Middle East who's now specified that any vessel operating for them must be able to stream video in real time back to shore. So frequently these drivers for change are task specific or client specific. And so a broad capability is usually required in order to accommodate any of these eventualities. And Vallianz are going to be discussing some of these drivers in their own presentation. So the challenges facing digitalization in the maritime sector. So when we look at the drivers, we're looking at why would we want to go down this digitalization process. When we look at the challenges, we're looking at what's actually stopping us from doing this. Why haven't we already done this? Why are more people not doing it already? And there's a number of common themes here. One of the common themes that we hear about is the perception that it's cost prohibitive. The capital expenditure required to transition to a remote operations working method is just going to be too high, or even remote monitoring of work may be too high, particularly for large fleet owners where you have a large number of vessels and a significant number of cameras spread across the vessel. To try and bring all of that data back on shore, it's almost an overwhelming challenge if it's not something you've done before and if it's not something you're familiar with. A lack of connectivity or insufficient bandwidth is probably the next biggest challenge that we hear about. Just simply, we don't have the bandwidth, we can't do this, so we're not going to bother. That's where we step in. We can work with the existing bandwidth that you have and effectively make much better use of this. So the bandwidth available to vessels operating offshore has traditionally been very limited, and it's also been quite expensive to upgrade to sufficient capacity for streaming the volume and video and data required to make remote operations a viable proposition. Now, it's fairly simple to stream a single video channel in relatively low resolution over the kind of bandwidth that most vessels have. But to actually make better use of that and to make that a viable proposition for an onshore operations model, there's a perception that you need much higher bandwidth, and that's not necessarily the case. Technology barriers are quite often described to us as being, an example would be, we've got older cameras, we've got an analog camera system, we don't have the infrastructure. This is just too big a change for us to suddenly swap from being completely offshore, almost analog form of working, to streaming everything onshore. It's almost as though it's just too big a step. But again, it's entirely possible to work with legacy equipment, standard definition video systems, right through to latest IP cameras, data acquisition hardware. It's all doable, it's all achievable. And the cost of doing that, as we'll see later on, will quite often be negated by the benefits that can be achieved by this. So when we talk about the sort of data that we might want to stream through, we'll come on to this in a little while, but it's things like perhaps vessel performance or vessel positioning, real-time condition monitoring of components and so on the vessel. So being able to stream all of that back and give you that real-time situational awareness within your onshore operations center is key to some of the work that we've been doing. There's also a perception that a move to remote operations or autonomy will just be too difficult, or it's too great a challenge for a company or its staff. Now, by engaging with companies such as Harvest, we can facilitate the change by through providing the infrastructure, using your existing communication systems that you have, whether that's VSAT, whether it's LTE. Again, this is all doable. So once these are solved, there's then still logistical and interfacing issues to overcome. So how do we leverage the existing infrastructure and systems? So can existing systems simply be incorporated into a remote operations model, or do some or all of the systems have to be swapped out? So again, as I say, we can generally incorporate legacy systems, and we very rarely find that a wholesale upgrade of a vessel system is required. How can we combine multiple independent systems into a simple interface? So again, what you may want to have is from across the vessel, a whole range of inputs and video sources being distributed to a single operation center where perhaps one person can have a good overview of everything that's going on. And again, that's the kind of thing that systems that we develop will facilitate. So how do you deliver functional value from the systems? And this is a key part, because even if we assume that legacy systems can be incorporated into a remote monitoring or remote operations interface, we need to look at what are the advantages that can be derived by the vessel owner or operator to make the move and the transition to a digital methodology viable. And that's one of the things that Vallianz are going to speak about in their presentation, in terms of what were the challenges, why did they want to do this, but what were the benefits that they actually saw as a result of doing this. And then finally, one of the big parts of this is how do we integrate and leverage artificial intelligence, AI, into these systems, into legacy systems. And this is important because if we want to seriously look at cost reduction and advancing the way that we work, then artificial intelligence is something that we all need to be looking at. Now, there's different levels of artificial intelligence, obviously, but some of the key things are just simply image recognition within a video. So you can identify when somebody walks past a camera, for example, to give you, again, situational awareness. So AI is often seen as a secondary element to remote operations, with the first phase simply being a remote monitoring solution that provides onshore situational awareness. However, the ability to build in this AI capability into a system and the early planning for it, so when you're planning out your digitalization process, by planning in AI, this means that the move to a fully remote operational model can be more cost effective in the long run. It can also be a lot quicker as well. So this often comes down to simple choice at the outset around what type of hardware to choose, what sort of video streaming should be selected. And for example, where video is streamed from point to point, any AI processing needs to be done at the source of the destination, i.e. offshore, in order to affect an instruction to a person or a system. However, where a video is streamed from point to cloud, so straight to the cloud to be accessed via a browser, then that AI processing can be done within the cloud. So there's different ways that we can look at AI, how we integrate that into our system. So this all comes into part of the planning process that we can help businesses with. It is complex issues to try and get your head around and to pull together, but by breaking it down into these individual steps, it does make it much simpler. So as I mentioned, bandwidth is often seen as one of the significant challenges here. So businesses still operating after the pandemic are now asking for information, facts, data, and reports to give executives the insights that they need to make informed business decisions. And these decisions are critical to their survival, to the next contract, or to the overall strategy of the business. With shipboard processes and technology becoming more sophisticated and prevalent, data usage is dramatically increasing. For example, a study undertaken by Inmarsat revealed that data usage is actually on the rise among all commercial vessel types. And an example of this is in 2022, the total network usage that they saw in the maritime sector was 45% higher than in 2021. And year-on-year data usage was highest among container shipping companies, more than doubling in June 2022 compared to June 2021. And while the use of connectivity increased by 70% among all oil tanker operations, it was 47% on bulk carriers over that same period. So across the board, we're seeing this significant increase in data usage and the demands on the bandwidth that is available. So an increasing number of shipping companies are upgrading their satellite communication services and adopting new technologies for applications, including route planning, ship-to-shore broadband data transfers, and to maximise fuel efficiency. They're also ensuring that crews remain connected with family and friends whilst at sea, as this is a mandatory requirement now recognised by the Maritime Labour Convention. So again, all of these things are putting additional demands and requirements onto the available bandwidth. And so ship owners are rightly looking to reduce their environmental footprint in line with tightening regulations, another important factor. And to do this, they need insight into the efficiency of multiple shipboard systems, the ability to gauge the impact of external factors on machinery and overall vessel performance. So this means collecting, storing, and analysing significant volumes of data. And some of the vessel operators that we've spoken about, that they're looking at terabytes of data that are now being transferred, even monthly. And this data has to go to various stakeholders who have an interest in what they're seeing. So what that requires is a series of processes that are operating on a stable network with better use of that bandwidth. The advanced digital solutions that allow owners to act on insights from data analysis and minimize emissions also depend on connectivity. So performance monitoring, using cloud-based tools to support greater ship sustainability, these all require high network stability and considerable bandwidth. So what we're finding is that the maritime connectivity is enabling an array of data-intensive processes whose benefits go beyond supporting environmental compliance. In addition to running applications to enhance performance in other areas of vessel operations, such as safety or onboard productivity, ship owners, from what we are seeing, are increasingly implementing video conferencing as well as remote inspections and maintenance to reduce costs and downtime. So as we're doing here, using Zoom, things like Teams calls and so on, these are becoming more prevalent. And again, it's more demand on your bandwidth. So as a result of this, a monthly average of the total maritime network usage for business operations has increased by more than 30% in the past 12 months. And the single greatest factor behind the exponential increase in data usage at sea is the growing appreciation for the importance of crew welfare. So as we mentioned, that's becoming a significant factor. So if we move on to the communications considerations, and what is it that we're speaking about? What do we do to address this? So Harvest address some of these challenges in 4 key ways. So bandwidth, basically our USP, our key selling point is our bandwidth utilization. So we basically make 50% better use of the available bandwidth for data transmission and video transmission. So we can stream, for example, full high definition video, 1080 pixel video at 60 frames per second over bandwidths as low as 256 kilobits per second, which is far beyond anything else that's available at the moment. In terms of latency, there's always a trade-off between latency and quality. And this is where we get into how our protocol actually works. So we minimize latency by using our proprietary protocol. And what this allows you to do is make a decision on where your priorities lie. Is it latency or is it quality? Now, by managing the bandwidth better, we can give you high quality and low latency. But again, there's still a trade-off between the two. So where we've worked with, for example, ROV companies, where they're flying the ROVs remotely, what they're looking for is this low latency. They need to see where the ROV is. They need to be able to respond to that. They need to get a signal back to the ROV to input a command in as short a possible time. So for them, if they miss a pixel, if they miss a frame, it probably doesn't matter because they've got that real-time situational awareness and they can control the ROV. When they get to the point where they actually want to be able to do an inspection, let's say it's an inspection of a weld, it needs to be high quality. So what they can then do is prioritize their quality. And the way this works is when you're transferring data across the internet, you're sending packets of data. And what our protocol is basically doing is knowing which packet has been sent, which one's going down, which one's coming next. And if you've decided that your priority is latency, if one of those packets doesn't arrive, then the protocol doesn't go back and get that missing packet because it's not really required, and that keeps the latency low. If you prioritize quality, then it will go back and get any missing packets and bring those through, and it'll build up that full high quality, high resolution image for you. But obviously that takes a little bit longer, so the latency increases slightly. And this is significantly different from anything else that's on the market, because what we're effectively doing is only sending each packet of data once, as opposed to sending multiple copies for redundancy. So we optimize the bandwidth. We only send a packet of data once, so we significantly minimize how much bandwidth we actually require. And in our tests, we've been able to show that even where there's up to 90% packet loss, we can still get data through and we can still provide usable video. So this mitigates against things like buffering and lag, and we have a self-healing error correction as well. So even where you have an unstable bandwidth connection and we have low bandwidth, we can still get data through for you, and we can still provide you with a very usable service. In addition to that, security is key for us. And for the types of data that's been sent through the maritime industry, through ROV projects we've worked on, through our defence contracts and so on, security is imperative. So we use a 384-bit encryption with a rolling key. So it's as good as you can get. This is high quality encryption. So moving on, this is a system overview as an example. What this represents is an overview of a typical setup with a vessel owner or operator, and it highlights a number of factors to consider when selecting your remote operations provider. One of the things to consider is, does the proposed system actually minimize the bandwidth utilization at source? And this is what we provide. So ideally, there should be one connection from the vessel to minimize the bandwidth utilization offshore, with all the other connections made on the onshore side, where you do have better bandwidth. The options for transmission may include point-to-point via the internet, maybe point-to-point via a closed network, so that it doesn't go via the public network, or it may be point-to-cloud, where you want to be able to send your video and data to the cloud to then be accessed via a browser by any authorized user anywhere in the world. And the differences between these systems are things like whether you require hardware at your decoding center or not. You then need to look at what's actually being streamed back to shore. Is it just video? If so, how many cameras? Are all the cameras equally important, or should more of the bandwidth be assigned to a specific camera where detail and clarity is more important? So for example, what we can offer is, let's say you're streaming 20 video cameras, CCTV cameras from a vessel back to shore. If one of those use the AI algorithm or an operator spots as something of interest, what we can allow you to do is effectively put all of your bandwidth, assign the majority of your bandwidth onto that one camera, and then stream that one camera through in much higher resolution. So you can put your bandwidth where you want it. Other things to consider are handheld or wearable devices to be included in video streaming. So for example, wearable headsets, which we can provide with the software built into them, allows for the video streaming and two-way communications via a wearable headset operated by a technician. Should that be included in part of the vessel part of the video streaming? It's an important factor to consider when you're setting up your vessel, because if you're going to use wearable devices, then obviously you're going to need a Wi-Fi connection around the vessel to connect to. An example of this, we had a case study where a class audit was completed by Lloyd's Register, with a class inspector working in an onshore location and a technician wearing a headset with live streaming video and two-way communications being directed around the vessel, and they were able to sign off on the class audit by using that technology. The streaming of data requirement, we've spoken about video, but many of our clients need to be able to stream data from sensors such as positional information, temperature, pressure, and this has to be frame synchronized with the video to ensure there's an accurate match between the video and the data. And being able to stream frame synchronized video and data from point to point may be a requirement, but it may also be beneficial to stream this to the cloud in order to present a live video with a sort of ticker tape of synchronized data presenting as a rolling line graph. So you could have a video of what's happening and a graph showing you any relevant data that's coming through at the same time. And that could be positional information, it could be real-time condition monitoring data. Other things to think about: who are your end users going to be? When we talk about remote operations and situational awareness, and it is quite easy to assume that this means a remote operations center located in the premises of the vessel owner or operator. However, with our experience, what we tend to find is, whilst that is the case, operators are often looking to bring in a technical authority or a technical specialist who's required for a short amount of time for a specific task. And being able to give them access as and when they require it to the live video is obviously critical to being able to facilitate these remote operations. So the challenge of planning a remote operation system correctly, as I've said, it's complex and varied, but the benefits of well managed are extensive. For example, the companies we've worked with have been able to significantly increase their safety, prevent loss and improve site security. As I said, utilize edge AI using auto notification for tasks such as object or person detection triggers, boundary traversal alerts. If someone crosses a particular boundary, you can get alerts coming through. As I said, it lessens the need to send personnel to remote sites for operational and technical support. And it keeps remote personnel connected with the onshore base. So moving on. So considerations for an integrated platform. So if you're thinking about moving to a remote operations methodology, what are the sort of things you should be thinking about? And as I say, we've spoken about video, we've spoken about data to a certain extent. So there's a number of key parts that we can break this down into. There's the communication system, which is how we connect. And how we connect is critical in terms of the software that's going to be used, the volume of data that's going to be transferred, the method that you're going to employ to transfer that data, and does it all need to be synchronized? Does it need to be recorded somewhere? Data acquisition interfaces. So where is the data actually going to be coming from? So as I said, this could be cameras around the vessel, it could be cameras on drones, it could be subsea ROVs. There's cameras everywhere these days, and being able to pick the correct cameras that you need to give you that overview of your operations is important. IoT, Internet of Things. More and more of our devices are now connected to the network, and that applies equally in the offshore sector as well, within the maritime sector. So what we're finding is more of the devices, more of the equipment that's being used offshore now has an internet connection, and that's allows the facilitation of things like real-time condition monitoring. So being able to bring that data through is important as well. Transport layer, how are we actually going to move this data across congested networks? And that's both within the vessel, where you may have Wi-Fi extenders, Wi-Fi routers and so on, through to your connection to the internet and then your connection back onshore. So you need to look at your the whole system holistically, as opposed to trying to take one part of it and say, right, well, we'll deal with this part, we'll get that done, then we'll move on to the next part. You want to try and put together a holistic overview of what is it you want to achieve. And even things like being able to bring in things like Zoom calls or WebEx calls into that that whole that system, and then bring in data from perhaps asset integrity databases, file storage systems, again, to give you that holistic approach. So generally speaking, we can divide the four main use cases for integrating systems into four categories. That's collaboration, conferencing, monitoring, and control. So collaboration, obviously where you've got a number of people working together on either a specific task or to respond to a situation. Conferencing, where multiple parties are contributing to collective understanding or an outcome. And again, that's where you're perhaps bringing in remote experts. Monitoring, it could just be continual monitoring that you want to be able to have for situational awareness. And as I say, bringing through the data from equipment and systems. And then for control, and the control part is where we really see this leading to ultimately, and that's the ability to remotely manipulate systems, robotics, equipment, and so on. So perhaps the most important consideration is how you derive value for all of these additional communications options and all of these things that we're talking about. How do you get the value from that? So how are you going to pull information from your existing systems into a digestible and legible format? Great, we can bring through all this video, we can bring through all the data, we can put it into an onshore location for you, but how are you going to actually utilize that data? What are you going to do with it? How are you going to ensure the security of your operational data? Now, I mentioned that we use this 384-bit rolling key encryption, so we can provide the means to have your data transmitted securely. But what are you going to do with that at the other end? How are you going to manage and store that? and how you're going to ensure that your data is available to the relevant parties as and when they need it. Quite often what we'll find is we'll get a call where there's an ad hoc requirement, a very short notice. So being able to give somebody access via a website at the touch of a button, say, there you go, you now have access to that video stream. And being able to pick, this is the important part, being able to pick and choose the vessel, the video stream, the actual data feed that you want is key to this. So we've spent a lot of time and energy and resources thinking about these same problems, which has led us to this overall approach and this architecture. And we'd be delighted to share any additional information with anyone if anybody has any questions. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to Marcus, and Marcus is going to give us an overview of Vallianz's experience. Now, we've worked with Vallianz for some time now, and Marcus is going to give an overview of the company and their experiences and perhaps some insights. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Andy, for that. Good morning, everybody. As mentioned earlier, my name is Marcus. I support Vallianz in their business development efforts in the renewable energy sector, mainly concentrating in offshore wind. Ma'am Elisa sends her apologies that she's unable to attend today. So let me first give you a brief overview of Vallianz and what we do. Vallianz is a Singapore-listed company with our headquarters also based in Singapore. We have a core workforce of over 300 staff, and Vallianz and our various entities around the world service and support the major energy companies around globally, mostly through direct contracts. We operate a fleet of more than 110 vessels. Some of these vessels will be highlighted in the fleet profile shortly. And we also provide vessel ownership and management, vessel design and engineering, shipbuilding and conversion services, and chartering and brokering services. Next slide, please. So currently, our fleet stands at 115 vessels of various types all around the world. These include offshore support vessels, lift boats, tugs, transport vessels, and a few specialized vessels. We also have a further 30 vessels under various stages of new build construction and should be delivered in the next 2-3 years. Next slide, please. So over the past few years, despite COVID and the downturn of the offshore industry, Vallianz has been extremely fortunate in being able to expand our fleet. However, with an increased fleet size also came increased challenges. Some challenges include real-time or up-to-date awareness of situations on board our vessels, requirements for better tracking and understanding the operations on board our fleet for optimization and better control, increased workloads on our superintendents to track all vessels when some of the data could be tracked digitally, the need to be able to capture and review historical data for remote troubleshooting by partners or vendors or for our own analysis, and finally, for clients who wanted more visibility on vessel operations, especially those vessels who are on long-term charters. Next slide, please. So after reviewing all those challenges, there was a need for us to transform in the way we operate, and Vallianz embarked on the pathway to digitalization. Next slide, please. One of our requirements included the real-time data collection of activities on board the vessel. Over the last year, we've worked with Harvest through Inmarsat to understand the services that Harvest provided, and subsequently signed up our first vessel with Harvest. Through the understanding and development process, Vallianz were impressed with the benefits and that presented itself through the adoption of this technology, as it addressed our needs for remote situational awareness at a reasonable bandwidth. Live streaming was made easy with little hassle. It also allowed us to better monitor our crew and operations, and also be able to communicate better with our crew when supporting them in troubleshooting, or in the crew understanding what the onshore supervising team required. It also created a platform that improved the onshore team's decision-making capabilities and being able to have a better understanding of the vessel's operations. And as we say, nothing beats a picture that tells 1,000 words and across language barriers. Next slide, please. So why do I bring up CCTV coverage as a consideration of the solution? We also say that the output is only as good as the data provided. For those of us who know vessel operations, monitoring vessel operations means having the right cameras at the right locations to suit our operational needs. Not all vessels requires the same placement of cameras, and the allocation of the position of the cameras is dictated by what operations are being conducted and what ship owners want to remotely monitor or manage. In our case, having considered the placement of the cameras, we decided to equip the forward and aft bridge with CCTV stations, and this allows for real-time situational awareness during operations and also acts as a rear view mirror for either the forward or aft console operator. This resulted in improved operational efficiency, forward and aft collaboration, improved safety aspects when carrying out critical operations, and improved crew confidence. Next slide, please. As highlighted by Andy in the slide on communication considerations, we as ship owners definitely understand that connectivity is of paramount importance to create a firm foundation towards digitalization. We cannot have proper monitoring without proper connectivity and reliability in connectivity. This means we create a seamless connection between ship and shore. Next slide, please. In addition to the Harvest solution of live streaming, our V-Hub integrates other technology-related projects to transform the efficiency and effectiveness of how we operate our vessels. This includes our 3D virtual reality platform, whereby we embed and hyperlink our database or online systems for access to documents and drawings, and also link to real-time data through our systems on board the vessels like engine performance and fuel monitoring. Together with the live streaming solution and the 3D VR platform, the onshore team can better assess and evaluate the situation on board and troubleshoot onboard issues with better clarity and understanding. It also creates the platform for crew training by allowing the crew to familiarize themselves with the vessel layout through a digital twin before being deployed on board the vessel. Next slide, please. As we are all aware, when there is a need, it creates the opportunity to develop and find solutions that are required. Implementing the Harvest solution has created tangible benefits in line with what we needed as a company. This includes live situational awareness, anytime, anywhere, cloud streaming solutions to stakeholders, including clients, monitoring cargo and critical operations remotely with better understanding, accident and incident investigations using the historical data to help in understanding root causes, timely assistance from shore experts without having to deploy engineers immediately or while waiting for the engineers to be available. This reduces reaction time and allows the engineers to better understand the situation on board and to be able better prepare themselves. We're also able to conduct data verification and validation and also improve crew confidence. Next slide, please. When adopting new technologies, there's always some challenges as no solution is perfect. These include interfaces between technology and equipment, understanding of what the technology can do, managing the expectations of the technology, both with internal and external stakeholders, and maximizing the value add of the solution to meet our needs. So some of the key lessons learned during this exercise: no matter how confident we are in a solution's implementation, there will always be parts that we do not foresee. I believe we're a slide behind. Yes, there you go. Planning and collaborative sessions between both parties are always important, and no two technologies are the same. And as an organization, we need to be clear on what we want before a partner can decide on what is the best services or offerings which is relevant to solve the problem. We also realize that maintaining that transparency of what is required and also finding the solution that works and constantly maintaining the open channel of communication during development and implementation to ensure we are all on the right path. In digitalization, the solution is only as good as the definition of the need or the expectations of both parties, and then the willingness of both teams to ensure that the right solution is developed. Once the parties are clear, then the rest becomes easier. as we know, in the world of digitalization, it needs buy-in from senior management. And sometimes management of companies do not have a clear vision of what we want to achieve. If through the process of exploration and discovery, the clarity is not provided, the solution provider will be unable to give a solution that will be deemed good enough. So I hope this gives some firsthand insight and feedback on how Vallianz's journey to digitalization has been paralleled and supported by Harvest. At this point, I would like to add that Harvest has met our expectations throughout the process and ensured that the solution has met all of our needs. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Marcus.
Thank you.
So at that point, we're obviously happy to take any questions, and I'll hand it back over to Carl.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, so if you'd like to stop screen sharing, and we're going to bring in Damien Brown here, and I think we're bringing in HaoTzi Tan, who's a technology executive with Vallianz, and I think Marcus Choy needs to leave for a client meeting. So we're in the Q&A section. If you want to put any questions in, we're not allowed to take any questions of a financial nature for Harvest because it's a stock listed company. But maybe while people are thinking of their questions, we're bringing HaoTzi. Would you like to? Well, what's your any personal perspectives? Well, we've seen an enormous amount of material about different ways companies can take advantage of this. Maybe if you want to share, what have you been most excited by, or is there any particular things you've the crew have been excited by? Do you have any thoughts off the top of your head? You're on mute at the moment, I think.
Yeah, I believe you guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Just from a perspective, because I have been heavily involved in bringing about the different kind of technologies together on board our very first vessel that we signed with Harvest. Just let me share some of the challenges, further going through the challenges that I have experienced, as well as the final thing that I was the happiest the most when I saw it. Okay, so some of the challenges that I faced is that the communication part actually plays a very important role in bringing about different kind of technologies together into a single platform to deliver our needs. Correct. So we have to start off from the basic planning on itself. That's where people like Harvest, my CCTV vendors, they have to come in together and come to agreement as well as alignment on how we're going to put that stuff. So typically on board the vessel, the location of the items are of paramount importance in these aspects. So let's say the MVR itself cannot be too far away from the encoder because they have to be connected by one way or another. I mean, it's been a fairly smooth journey with, of course, the aids of Harvest technical team giving their full-time support to me. I think it's been delivered pretty smoothly, I would say. And then we got the stream online, and then when the stream got online, I was so damn happy that it happened. Just a brief sharing on that.
Wow, there's a question here from Paul Hart. What are Vallianz's plans to roll out the technology to their entire fleet? Is that something you're able to answer, or is that confidential?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I am not able to definitely tell you every kind of technology that we plan to roll out on our fleet, but I can tell you what we are intending to complete with the existing technology that is upcoming or is out there. So ideally, my soups or my service engineers or my team or maybe my crew itself, they don't have to be on board to do things on board. Am I able to bring that point clear to you? So there, of course, we talk about technology. There are many kind of technology that can aid with us. But we are in the midst of actually exploring those kind of technology to deem our needs as a vessel owner. So I hope that's answered that question.
Wow, yeah, that sounds great. So we've got a question from Igor Tregu Banku. I'm just looking you up on LinkedIn, Igor. So Managing Director of Sea Harmony, former technical superintendent with a tanker company in the UAE. He's asking about the crew perspective. I think one thing is interesting. I can see is we're moving from the shipping to the offshore industry, where the relationship with crew is very different because I guess crew are offshore for shorter periods of time, perhaps. But yeah, do you want to for HaoTzi? Do you want to? How do the crew think about this?
So just let me have a quick read on the question.
It's quite a long question to read, this one,
yeah.
but I think it's a crew feedback is the important road to read.
Well, obviously the crew's cooperation is, of course, the most important things actually to bring this live and successful. We are heavily dependent on their feedback at the very preliminary stage on this. Training session, I would say yes. We have a kind of implemented a digital walkthrough platform for our crew to actually do it before they actually board the vessel itself. So what does this mean? It means that the crew are already somehow familiarized themselves to the vessel as an as-built vessel before they already bucked or bought the vessel to do their operations. So I think there's one more.
Oh, that's great. It was a question, I think, is for Damien and Andy. So Martin Patient is IT manager with Telford Offshore in the UAE. So we're getting into, are you really getting 1080 pixel frames or 60 frames a second, or is the AI generating the frames in between? I don't know which of the two of you, Damien or Andy, would like to.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. Thanks for the question, Martin. It's a great question. I mean, with the protocol, we really seek to drive as much efficiency as possible. So we leverage everything at our disposal. So, I mean, AI is definitely something like predictive algorithms are definitely used within the protocol, but generally that's driven by sort of variations in the video frames at site. So at the end of the day, if there's a lot of motion in the site, it's only for static parts of the images that generally AI is leveraged. If that answers your question.
Wow. So the question from Dion Cowthray, who LinkedIn tells me is one of your neighbours in Perth. I don't know if you know him. I don't actually understand the question, but he's asking, are we far down the technology road yet for the need of personal cameras? I don't know what personal cameras he might be talking about. Do you know how to?
Yeah, for the need of personal cameras. In terms of, if it's referring to wearables, then 100%. Yeah, I mean, wearable cameras is something that we, that we sort of leverage with clients on a very frequent basis. Especially if people are having to be mobile around a vessel, so walking around engine rooms for sort of remote UWILD surveys and things along those lines. This is definitely a tool that's in the arsenal that we're using on a pretty much a daily basis, and we're sort of currently we're predominantly running with Realware's HMT1. But also Vuzix and the RS-Stick headsets as well.
Wow. So there's a question from Robbie Huckley. So I looked him up on LinkedIn. He's coming up in Papua New Guinea, manager of communications and network systems. Very different audience to our normal one, I think. He's asking, how are you selling the platform? Is it through distributors or are you selling it directly? Is that I don't think that's too commercially sensitive to answer, is it?
No, look, not at all. And again, it's a great question, and it generally depends on the complexity of the system. As Andy showed in his great presentation, there's a lot of sort of variations and permutations of systems that can be sort of deployed. Some that are just sort of streaming video, and others that are a lot more involved and require sort of further integration or some customized sort of development work to sort of facilitate and roll out. So it's a mixture of both. We do work with quite closely with quite a few good resellers and partners, but we also deal direct, especially for the more complex solutions we're putting to market.
Wow. So Carl Charalambus, so LinkedIn says he works in property in Greater Brisbane. Is the products in demand right now, or is it a little too ahead of its time? Maybe HaoTzi, I think you've made it quite clear it's in demand right now. Should we go to HaoTzi first for this one? Or you're mute at the moment.
All right. So I believe in the maritime sector where connectivity and data usage or bandwidth, I would say, is of, importance. I think HarbourStack is there to assist us as a vessel owner to actually maximize or fully utilize our bandwidth to get what we want in this case. So I think that from our perspective, I think it's pretty in demand right now.
Wow.
I can maybe
ahead of its time. Not too, I think it's the right time to actually get it.
Oh, should we go to Andy, is it?
So I was going to say, I could just add to that one, and that we're already seeing with oil and gas operators, as I mentioned, in the Middle East, they're actually stipulating in their ITT documentation that any vessel operators who work for them must be able to stream video back to shore. So it's not so much that it's just a nice to have; it's actually a requirement for some operators now.
Okay, so Troels Rygaard, who I think is a business executive in Copenhagen, he's asking, I don't know what he means by 8/2 MB. Does he mean?
Yeah, that's fine, Carl.
Oh,
I mean,
you know what
again,
he
look, it's a very pertinent question, and I mean, it really depends. It really depends on the number of streams that you want to transact from one place to another, and the quality of those streams that's required. I mean, we're confident in saying that we can supply decision-making quality video. So the quality of video that you can make operational decisions from with a high degree of certainty in the low hundreds of kilobits per stream. So eight sort of down and 2 up is more than enough. But as well, it's worth mentioning that as we sort of shift the sort of paradigm around from, you know, wanting to draw down data onto the vessel and only pushing a small amount up, we've now flipped that. So we're pushing, so 8 down, 2 up. So it's the skinny link that we really want to maximize. So yeah, it's really the upload where the pressure's on, and that's something really important to sort of take note of.
Well, so I don't know if you can answer Paul Hart's question. Are you the only company in the world with the capability to self-repair when packets are lost during transmission? I guess if there's another company you don't know about, you could get in trouble if you answer this one wrongly, I suppose, isn't it? But we'll say.
I mean, there's a lot of people claiming a lot of stuff in this space at the moment. You know, we say seeing is believing, and often a lot of our clients have been through, you know, various stages with sort of other offerings and gotten to different places. I think that we can say we're certainly one of the only that offer a comprehensive solution with video, audio, and data, as well as control functionality. So it's for us, it's the whole solution. We believe that we have a market-leading protocol. We're yet to see anything that's more efficient, more reliable, more stable, more secure. But you know, technology moves extremely fast. So what's current now may not be in the very near future. You know, but it's another great question.
Okay, this question from Thomas Headley. He's asking estimated costs of digital twin per asset. I don't actually remember you mentioning anything about building digital twins. I don't know if I wasn't paying attention to that point.
Oh, that was Marcus from Vallianz that was talking about their VHub solution. And yeah, I'm sure Tan can probably speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, it's dependent on what kind of vessel you're looking at. I can't give you an exact range of cost, but typically for I would say I would just give you a off the bat value. I would say it's more appropriate in this sense. It will cost about easily a few $1,000s to actually create a digital twins. But it also depends like what kind of function you want to add into the digital twins, like what you think the digital twin must be capable of. There are many factors that you have to consider. I hope that answered the question.
Well, that's great. Well, we've got just about 1 or 2 minutes left. Maybe we'll give Andy the closing words. I mean, from my perspective, I think it's really exciting. We're taking the offshore, we're taking the shipping industry, bringing technologies which the oil and gas industry has had for 15 years. I've never heard shipping talk about remote monitoring before today, but heard about oil and gas companies talking about this for a long time. But do you want to give people some thoughts you'd like to leave them with, Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. Oh, first of all, thanks very much to everybody for joining this call today. It's been a great opportunity for us to speak with everybody, and obviously thanks to Vallianz as well for joining in and supporting us with this. Yeah, my background, as I say, oil and gas, slightly different market, but I did spend a lot of time offshore on vessels, and I think the crossover between what I've personally seen and where the market is heading in terms of the requirements for video streaming, data streaming, remote operations, it's only going to move in that direction. There's only going to be more and more of a requirement for that. We're already seeing things like autonomous vessels, autonomous surface vessels, AUVs, subsea. And whilst that's not going to be an immediate swap over, there's going to be a gradual transition as we bring more people from the offshore sector to onshore. And I think the earlier the vessel owners, vessel operators can start on that journey, because it is very much a journey. Nobody's going to just suddenly jump from having everyone offshore to everybody onshore. That's not going to happen. So this gradual process where you set up your remote operations center, you gradually bring through more data. And when you see the benefits that can generate, you can then start to bring through additional data. You can perhaps upgrade your systems offshore. So you are gathering the real-time condition monitoring data. You start to feed that through with your synchronized video. start to develop your digital twin models. And HaoTzi was talking about the costs of a digital twin, and I have worked in digital twins in a previous career. And again, as he says, it really depends on what you want to bring into that. But starting this process where you're streaming the video back to shore, that can then feed into the digital twin. I think there's a bit of there's different methods of looking at digital twins. Some people just think it's a model of what you've got. Personally, I think a true digital twin is where you're actually bringing through the real data. It's real time. You've effectively got a replica of what you're seeing offshore in a digital form. So you need to be able to get the sensor data, the video data through in real time. And that's a journey, and hopefully that's what we can help people with.
And do you want a 1 second answer to Mahesh Singh's question that's just popped up? He's asking 256 kilobits per second for high density video live streaming. Is that maximum information rate or committed information rate? Is that a quick question?
So I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, we're very comfortable on sort of BGAN terminals at the low hundreds of kilobits, Mahesh, like 100 kilobits and even lower. So it really depends on the operational use case and what you want to do with it. But 100% we can get reliable video around 100 kilobits.
Wow, well, that's fantastic. Well, that's the end of the webinar, and thanks for staying so late in the evening to all three of, well, Damien and HaoTzi definitely, and I shall pass on to Farah for the closing words. Thank you. Oh.
To our guest speakers, Marcus Choy and HaoTzi Tan from Vallianz, Andy Freeman and Damien Brown from Harvest Technology Group, and to all our viewers. We'll be sending you a YouTube video link soon with contact details if you have any further questions. Join us for our next vessel performance optimization webinar, CII, what a more holistic approach might mean, which is on the 1st of December and sponsored by Wärtsilä. Book it online at our website and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.